let's be honest. Sometimes swiping through dating apps feels less like finding a connection and more like, I don't know, navigating this endless, slightly soul-crushing video game.
It really can feel that way.
And that little unmatched notification. Ouch. It can sting way more than it probably should, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, if you've ever felt like lost in this modern dating maze, or maybe wondered why those little rejections feel so big, you're definitely in the right place.
Yeah.
This deep dive is going to give you, hopefully, a fresh, kind of grounded way to think about it all.
Exactly. We're diving deep into understanding what makes modern dating so complex, and our guide for this exploration is The Therapist's Handbook for Modern Dating.
Okay.
And this isn't just another book of, quick dating tips. It's really rooted in the author's actual real-world experience as a therapist.
Right.
And it blends that with some pretty solid psychological principles. Things from cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and mindfulness, too.
Okay, so our mission today is basically to pull out the most useful stuff from this handbook. Like, not just the what to do, but the why it works. We want to help you, the listener, build some genuine confidence, manage that, that gnawing dating anxiety.
Yeah.
And ultimately, hopefully, create meaningful connections that go a bit deeper than just surface level advice.
And right off the bat, the book validates something really important. It says that feeling anxious or stressed or even panicky about dating is incredibly common.
Which is kind of a relief to hear, actually.
It is. It's not a sign that something's wrong with you. As the handbook itself puts it, if you find yourself feeling anxious, stressed, or even panicky before, during, or after dating interactions, know that you're not alone.
It really is almost a relief to hear that so directly. And what I found really interesting is how the book explains why even something seemingly small, like an unmatch online, can feel so intensely negative. It connects it to something really primal, right?
It does. What's fascinating here is how it taps into our evolutionary wiring. I mean, think about it. For our ancestors, being socially accepted wasn't just nice, it was crucial for survival.
Like life or death.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Being ostracized meant being cut off from resources, protection, the group, so that deep-seated need to belong, it's still very much a part of us. So while a digital rejection today doesn't carry those same literal life or death consequences, our brains can still interpret it as a threat to our social standing.
Oh.
That fear of being unwanted, it triggers those same ancient alarm bells in our system.
Okay, so dating anxiety isn't just in our heads. It has some pretty deep roots. But the big question is, what can we actually do about it?
Right, and that's where the handbook really shines. We're going to explore some practical ways to recognize and deal with dating anxiety.
Okay.
And like the book emphasizes, experiencing this anxiety isn't some personal flaw or a sign of weakness. It's actually a pretty normal human response to a situation that can feel inherently vulnerable.
The book really gets into the specific emotional symptoms we might experience when that dating anxiety kicks in. Let's say we talk about those. First up is overthinking, like replaying every interaction in our heads. We've all been there, right?
Oh, absolutely. Overthinking or rumination is basically getting caught in these cycles of repetitive thoughts, often analyzing past dates or, worrying excessively about future ones.
Yeah.
The book gives a perfect example. Spending hours after a date wondering if you said the right things or if the other person was truly interested. It's like your brain just can't let it go.
It's exhausting. And then there's that inner critic, the voice constantly telling us we're not good enough. What kind of negative self-talk does the book highlight there?
Well, negative self-talk is that really harsh internal monologue where you criticize yourself relentlessly, telling yourself things like, you're not attractive enough or smart enough or interesting enough to find someone. The book points to common examples like, they're never going to like me, I'm always going to be alone, or I'm so awkward. These thoughts can feel incredibly powerful and can really sabotage your dating efforts.
And that fear of rejection?
Yeah.
Oh, man. That can stop us from even putting ourselves out there in the first place. How does that fear play out typically?
A strong fear of rejection often leads to avoidance. So maybe not asking someone out or not responding to messages or even ending things prematurely just to avoid the possibility of being rejected later on.
Wow.
The handbook illustrates this with avoiding asking someone out because you're convinced they'll say no.
Yeah.
It's a way we try to protect ourselves from potential pain,
Like we preemptively reject ourselves before anyone else gets the chance.
Exactly.
And sadly, constantly facing these anxieties, it can really chip away at our self-esteem over time.
It really can. Low self-esteem in the dating context often involves feeling inadequate or maybe unworthy of a healthy relationship, especially when you start comparing yourself to others.
Oh, the comparison trap.
Yeah, the book touches on that common experience of feeling inadequate compared to other people's online profiles. It's so easy to fall into that, but it rarely reflects the full reality.
Right. And for those of us who've maybe been hurt in the past, opening up and trusting someone new can feel almost impossible sometimes.
Yeah, difficulty trusting others often stems from those past negative experiences. It can lead to this reluctance to be vulnerable or share personal feelings, all out of fear of getting hurt again.
Makes sense.
The example the book gives is being hesitant to share personal details or express your feelings. It's a natural protective mechanism, sure, but it can also really hinder forming those important new connections.
Okay, this all sounds like a lot to handle. Is there a fundamental idea in the book, like an anchor maybe, for navigating these tough emotions?
Absolutely. The book introduces the concept of self-compassion very early on and frames it as a crucial foundation for the whole dating journey.
Self-compassion. Okay.
Think about how you'd support a friend who is going through a difficult time with dating. You'd likely offer them kindness, understanding, right?
Yeah, totally.
Self-compassion is basically about extending that same level of care and acceptance to yourself, especially when you're struggling.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So in practical terms, how does self-compassion actually help when we're navigating the ups and downs, the rejections, the anxiety?
Well, it acts like a buffer against the sting of rejection. Instead of beating yourself up after a date doesn't go well or you get unmatched, you can approach yourself with kindness. Acknowledge that, hey, dating is hard and rejection happens to literally everyone.
All right.
This helps you bounce back more quickly. It also reduces the intensity of dating anxiety because it fosters this sense of inner security and resilience. And ultimately, it cultivates greater self-acceptance, regardless of your relationship status.
The book also talks about a really important shift in how we approach dating itself. Like, instead of fixating on finding the one, what does it suggest we focus on instead?
Yeah, that's a big one. The handbook encourages shifting your focus from solely searching for that lifelong partner, which puts immense pressure on every interaction,
Totally.
to being open to meeting interesting people and actually enjoying the process of connection itself. It also reframes rejection, not as a personal failure, but more as a learning opportunity, a chance to understand what you're really looking for and maybe refine your approach.
So less pressure, more learning.
Exactly. This mindset shift can take a lot of the pressure off and potentially make dating a much more positive, or at least less dreadful, experience.
Okay, so we're acknowledging the anxiety. We're trying to practice self-compassion. It's like we're finally getting a compass for this dating maze, maybe.
Yeah.
A way to treat ourselves with kindness when we hit a dead end.
That's a great way to put it.
And we're trying to cultivate a healthier mindset, focusing on connection rather than just the outcome of finding the one. Now, what about actually making that first move? That can feel like scaling Mount Everest for some people.
It absolutely can. That feeling of being totally stuck, unable to initiate contact. It often comes from that critical inner voice we talked about. And also our body's natural fight or flight response kicking in. It's almost like our brain misinterprets a potential social interaction, even a small one, as a genuine threat.
So how do we overcome that first move, Reese? What practical advice does the book offer?
Well, the handbook provides some really actionable steps. Start simple. A genuine smile and brief, non-creepy eye contact. That's a pretty universal signal of approachability, right?
Simple enough.
Then choose your moment. Try not to approach someone when they're clearly deeply engaged in something else.
Right, timing.
And try to project a sense of confidence even if you're feeling nervous inside. Stand a little taller, maintain that gentle eye contact, speak clearly. Sometimes faking it till you make it can actually help.
And when it comes to actually starting the conversation,
Yeah.
what are some good go-to strategies that go beyond just a simple hi? Because hi can feel flat.
Totally. The handbook really emphasizes using open-ended conversation starters. Questions that require more than just a yes or no answer.
To get them talking.
Exactly. They encourage more detailed responses and help keep the conversation flowing. The book gives some great examples, like a situational opener. Maybe comment on something specific like, I love your scarf. Where did you find it? Or, this place has a really cool vibe. Have you been here before?
Okay, based on the situation.
Or you could try an observational one like, I couldn't help but notice you're reading book title. What do you think of it so far?
Ah, finding a hook.
Yeah. The key is really to be genuine. Let your actual personality come through, and also be prepared for any response you might get, positive, negative, or neutral. don't attach too much to the outcome.
Once the conversation gets going, though, it's not just about the words we're saying, is it? The book stresses we need to be able to read the other person, understand how they're responding beyond just their words.
Exactly. Communication is so much more than just verbal. A huge part of it is nonverbal things like body language, facial expressions, tone of voice. Learning to read these social cues can give you a much richer understanding of how the interaction is actually going.
Okay, let's break down some of those cues. What are some positive signals that someone might be feeling a connection or is, interested in continuing the conversation?
So positive cues generally indicate engagement and receptiveness. Look for things like sustained, comfortable eye contact, not intense staring, but a relaxed gaze.
Right.
Genuine smiles, the kind that reach their eyes. Open body language is a big one. Uncrossed arms, uncrossed legs, maybe leaning in slightly.
Okay.
Sometimes you might notice subtle mirroring where they unconsciously copy your posture or gestures. They might also position themselves a bit closer to you or initiate light, appropriate touch like on the arm.
Mm-hmm.
Attentive listening is key nodding. Verbal cues like, asking follow-up questions, tilting their head while you're speaking, and using a warm, inviting tone of voice.
Okay, so those are pretty clear signs of interest. What about those cues that are maybe less clear? Like, they don't necessarily mean they are interested, but they're not exactly running for the door either. Neutral cues.
Yeah, neutral cues don't strongly indicate either interest or disinterest. These could include things like brief, intermittent eye contact. A relatively neutral facial expression, not smiling but not frowning either, maintaining sort of an average physical distance, or speaking in a fairly monotone or even voice.
So not necessarily bad, just neutral.
Exactly. These can sometimes just be someone's baseline demeanor, or maybe they're influenced by the context of the situation. Maybe they're just a bit shy initially.
Got it. And then what are the nonverbal cues that might suggest someone isn't really feeling it, or maybe wants to wrap things up? The negative signals.
Negative cues often signal disengagement or discomfort. So consistently avoiding eye contact is a big one. Frowning or scowling. Crossed arms or legs can sometimes indicate defensiveness or closing off, turning their body away from you. Fidgeting a lot, looking around the room, seeming easily distracted.
Like they're looking for an escape route.
Kind of, yeah. Giving very short, unenthusiastic answers to your questions, and speaking in a flat, cold, or dismissive tone.
Okay, that's a lot of information to process in the moment. Any tips on how to actually interpret all these signals without getting totally overwhelmed or misreading things?
That's a great point. The handbook emphasizes looking for clusters of cues rather than focusing on just one single thing in isolation.
Clusters, okay.
For instance, someone glancing away briefly doesn't automatically mean they're uninterested, but if they're also avoiding eye contact most of the time and have their arms crossed and seem distracted, well, that paints a clearer picture, right?
Yeah, the combination tells a story.
Exactly. And it's also really important to remember cultural differences and individual communication styles. They can definitely influence nonverbal behavior. So try to avoid making snap judgments based on just one or two isolated signals. Always consider the overall context of the interaction.
That makes sense. Now, building confidence. That's such a big piece of the puzzle for so many people in the dating world. The book talks about building it through small, manageable steps.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like in practice?
The core principle here is gradual exposure. It's kind of like dipping your toe in the water instead of diving headfirst into the deep end.
Okay.
Think about the social situations related to dating that tends to make you feel anxious. Maybe it's initiating conversation, maybe it's asking for a number, maybe it's just making eye contact.
Right.
Then create a sort of hierarchy, a list, starting with the ones that trigger the least amount of anxiety for you.
Start small.
Exactly. Practice engaging in those lower anxiety situations regularly, maybe daily, until they start to feel more comfortable, less scary. Then, once you feel ready, gradually work your way up to slightly more challenging scenarios on your list.
Can you give us a concrete example of how someone might use this small steps approach? Maybe for someone who finds starting conversations really hard.
Sure. Let's say striking up a conversation with a complete stranger feels really daunting, like a 10 out of 10 on the anxiety scale.
Yeah.
A first small step, maybe a 2 or 3, might be simply making eye contact and offering a brief, friendly smile to people you pass throughout your day, the barista, someone on the street. No talking needed yet.
Okay, just eye contact and a smile.
Right. Once that feels less nerve-wracking, maybe the next step of 4 or 5 could be saying a simple hello or good morning to those same people.
Adding a word.
Exactly. Then maybe progressing to asking a very simple closed question like, is this seat taken? Or giving a quick compliment like, nice weather today, isn't it?
Yes.
You see how you gradually increase the challenge.
Yeah, building up slowly.
The key is to expose yourself to these situations in small, manageable doses. This allows your anxiety to naturally decrease over time as you gain positive experiences. Focus on the process of putting yourself out there, not necessarily on the outcome of each tiny interaction.
That's important. Process over outcome.
And definitely remember to be patient and kind to yourself throughout this process. Building confidence takes time and practice. It's not an overnight fix.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears a bit, in today's dating landscape, especially with apps, our online profile is often the very first impression we make. How can we craft a profile that truly reflects who we are and, attracts the right kind of attention?
That online profile is huge, isn't it? It's your digital handshake. The handbook really stresses the importance of showing rather than just telling who you are.
Show, don't tell. Okay.
So for photos, choose high-quality ones that are clear, well-lit, and genuinely represent you how you look day to day, not just on your fanciest occasion. Include variety.
Like not just selfies.
Right. Maybe a good headshot where you're smiling, but also some photos of you actually doing things you enjoy, hiking, playing music, cooking, whatever it is. It gives context and conversation starters.
Makes sense. What about the bio? That's often the hardest part.
It can be tricky. The advice is to move beyond just listing adjectives like adventurous, kind, funny. Instead, use specific anecdotes or examples to illustrate those qualities.
So instead of saying, I love to travel, maybe say
something like, still dreaming about that time I got lost in the streets of Rome and discovered the best gelato of my life, or my goal is to visit every national park, currently planning a trip to Zion. See the difference? It paints a picture.
Yeah, much more engaging.
Be honest and authentic. Don't try to be someone you're not. Highlight your core values, things that are genuinely important to you in a connection. And please, please proofread. Typos can be a real turnoff.
Good point. The book even offers a kind of template or structure for a compelling bio, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What does that generally look like?
Yeah, it suggests a framework, something along the lines of, I'm a your profession, or a brief description of your life who's passionate about hobby 1, especially specific detail about hobby 1, like a recent project or experience.
Okay, start specific.
Then maybe, on a typical weekend, you might find me activity 1, for example, exploring local trails, or activity 2, for example, trying out a new recipe. I'm looking to connect with someone who values value 1, for example, kindness and value 2, curiosity, and who appreciates fun, quirky detail, for example, a good pun, or bad sci-fi movies.
I like the quirky detail part.
Yeah, it adds personality, and maybe end with something like bonus points if you also enjoy another fun, quirky detail or shared interest. The book provides variations on this, focusing on different aspects like adventure or creativity or humor.
So the key takeaways for the bio are:
be specific, use examples, inject your personality. Humor is great if it's natural for you. Focus on positive attributes and what you do enjoy, and maybe include a low-pressure call to action if it feels right, like message me if you have any great hiking trail recommendations.
Okay, so we've crafted this great, authentic profile. Now, how do we break the ice with that first opening message? How do we make it more engaging than just a generic hey or hi?
The generic messages, they really don't show much effort, do they?
Not really.
The handbook strongly advises personalizing your initial message. Look through their profile pictures, bio prompts, and reference something specific that genuinely caught your eye or sparked your interest.
Show you actually read it.
Exactly. Ask an open-ended question related to that specific thing, something that encourages them to share more than just a one-word answer. Keep your message relatively brief and engaging. Don't send a novel. And most importantly, let your own authentic voice come through. Don't try to use lines that don't sound like you.
Can you give us some concrete examples of opening messages that tend to be more effective based on commenting on their profile?
Sure. Let's say they mention they love hiking in their bio or have a hiking picture. You could say, that picture from trail name, if mentioned, looks amazing. I love hiking too. What's your favorite trail you've done recently?
Specific and a question.
Nice. Or if they mention a favorite band or artist. I saw you're a fan of band name. Me too. Did you catch their latest album show?
Connecting on shared interests.
If they have a pet picture. Your dog cat is adorable. What's their name breed? People love talking about their pets.
Sure.
Even something lighthearted about a funny prompt answer can work, like, your answer about prompt topic made me laugh. I totally disagree, because... But always try to end with a question to keep the ball rolling.
Good examples. And on a flip side, what are some types of opening messages that the book suggests we definitely steer clear of? The ones to avoid.
Definitely avoid those super generic greetings like, hey, hi, what's up? They just get lost in the noise.
Yeah, zero effort.
Messages that focus solely on physical appearance, you're hot, can come across as superficial or even objectifying. Best to comment on something deeper.
Good point.
Overly long, rambling messages can be really overwhelming for someone to receive first thing. Keep it concise. And absolutely steer clear of anything that is sexually suggestive, overly forward, or makes inappropriate assumptions right off the bat. That's a fast track to getting blocked or ignored.
Okay, solid advice. So let's say the online conversation is flowing. We're exchanging messages. It feels like there's maybe some connection. How do we know when might be a good time to suggest taking things offline and meeting in person? And how do we do that smoothly?
That transition can feel a bit tricky. The handbook suggests doing it relatively casually and keeping the initial offline meetup very low pressure. Don't suggest a 5-course dinner for the first meeting.
Right, keep it simple.
Think about suggesting something quick and easy, like grabbing a coffee, visiting a local bookstore if you both like reading, taking a walk in a nearby park, or maybe checking out a low-key event or market that aligns with a shared interest you've already discussed online.
Frame it around something you've connected on.
Exactly. Like, hey, you mentioned you love independent bookstores. There's a great one near me. Would you be up for checking it out sometime this week? Or, since we both seem to be coffee addicts, maybe we could grab one after work.
Nice and casual. What about safety? That's super important.
Absolutely crucial. The book really emphasizes prioritizing safety. Always meet in a public place for the first few times. Let a friend or family member know where you're going, who you're meeting, and when you expect to be back.
Good plan.
Arrange your own transportation to and from the date so you're not reliant on them. And most importantly, always trust your gut feeling. If something feels off before or during the date, it's okay to leave.
Definitely. And what if you suggest meeting up and they say no, or they just don't respond?
That happens. Try not to take it personally. There could be a million reasons why they declined or didn't respond, and most of them probably have nothing to do with you specifically. Maybe they got busy, maybe they started talking to someone else, maybe they just weren't feeling it enough. Just wish them well mentally and shift your focus elsewhere. Don't dwell on it.
Easier said than done sometimes, but good advice. What about after that initial contact, whether it was just a brief online exchange or maybe a short in-person meeting like bumping into someone?
Yeah.
How do we manage our expectations about what might come next?
And that's key, managing expectations. It's really important to understand that initial contact, whether it's sending a few messages back and forth or having a quick 5-minute chat somewhere, doesn't automatically guarantee a deeper connection or a full-fledged date.
Right, it's just step one.
Exactly. Think of it as just the very, very first step in potentially getting to know someone. Try not to build it up too much in your head. Like we said, there could be various reasons why someone might not want to proceed further, and it often doesn't reflect negatively on you.
But what about the etiquette of following up? Say you met someone briefly in person and exchanged numbers. Is there a generally accepted time frame or method that the book recommends for reaching out?
Following up within, say, 24 to 48 hours after meeting someone in person and getting their contact info is generally a good guideline. It shows you're interested without seeming overly eager or waiting so long they forget who you are.
Okay, 24, 48 hours. And how? Text, call.
A simple text message is usually the most common and least intrusive method these days for that initial follow-up. Keep it light, friendly, and maybe reference something specific you talked about during your brief interaction.
Like?
Something like, hey, Name, it was great chatting with you about topic at place yesterday. Hope you have a good rest of your week. Or if you felt a good connection, maybe, hey, really enjoyed our chat earlier. I was thinking about what you said about specific detail. Maybe we could continue the conversation sometime.
Keep it light and specific.
Exactly. However, it's equally important to be attuned to their responsiveness. If they don't reply after a reasonable amount of time, or if their replies are very short and unenthusiastic, it's generally best to respect that signal and not continue to pursue contact. Avoid double or triple texting if you're getting silence.
Right. Know when to let it go. Don't be pushy.
Absolutely. Respect their space and their decision, even if it's conveyed through silence.
Okay, let's fast forward. Let's imagine we've navigated the initial steps, and we've actually made it to planning a proper first date. The handbook has quite a bit to say about this. Where should we even begin in terms of deciding what to do and where to go? It feels like a lot of pressure.
It can feel like pressure, but planning it thoughtfully can actually set you up for a much better experience. Choosing the right location and activity is really crucial for a successful first date. First, location. Aim for somewhere public and neutral territory for both safety and comfort.
Public and neutral. Got it.
Think about the kind of atmosphere you want. Do you want a quiet setting where you can easily talk and hear each other? Or something a bit more lively and interactive? Consider noise levels.
Good point. Hard to connect if you're shouting over music.
Exactly. Also, think about accessibility and convenience. Is it relatively easy for both of you to get to? You don't want someone having a stressful hour-long commute just to meet for a quick coffee.
True. Okay, so that's location. What about the actual activity? What kinds of things tend to work well for a first date, according to the book?
The main goal for a first date activity should be to facilitate conversation and connection in a low-pressure environment. So focus on things that allow you to talk and get to know each other.
Like what? Give us some good ideas.
The classics are often classics for a reason. Meeting for coffee or tea is great. It's casual, time-flexible, and conversation-focused. Taking a walk in a pleasant park or along a waterfront. Browsing a museum or art gallery can be good too, as it gives you things to talk about in your surroundings.
Built-in conversation starters.
Exactly. Having casual drinks at a not-too-loud bar or lounge, even something slightly more active but still low-key, like mini golf or bowling, can be fun if you think your date might be into it. It adds an element of playfulness.
Okay, those sound good. What activities does the book suggest we avoid for a first date?
Generally, it's best to avoid activities where you can't really talk or interact much. Movies are the prime example. You're just sitting in silence in the dark for 2 hours.
Right, save that for later.
Very formal or expensive dinners can feel too intense, like an interview, and put a lot of pressure on the situation. Loud concerts or clubs make conversation nearly impossible.
Yeah.
And probably avoid high-exertion physical activities unless you both explicitly agreed you're super into, say, rock climbing for a first date, which is unlikely. Keep it comfortable.
Keep it comfortable. Focus on conversation. Makes sense.
And always remember flexibility. Be open to your date's input or suggestions if they have preferences. It shows you're considerate.
Good point. Okay, we've picked the perfect spot and activity. Now, how do we make a good first impression when we actually meet in person? Those first few seconds count, right?
They really do. First impressions happen incredibly quickly and are heavily influenced by your nonverbal communication, your body language. Pay attention to your posture. Try to stand or sit tall, but in a relaxed way. Avoid slouching.
Stand tall, be relaxed.
Make appropriate eye contact. Not staring intensely, but meeting their gaze naturally shows you're engaged and confident. A genuine smile is huge. It conveys warmth and approachability instantly.
The real smile, the one that reaches the eyes.
Yes, the Duchenne smile, if you can manage it naturally. If you're meeting in person and it feels appropriate, a firm but friendly handshake can be a good way to initiate contact.
Okay, handshake. What else?
Think about your attire. Dress in a way that makes you feel comfortable and confident, and that's appropriate for the venue and activity. You don't need to be someone you're not, but putting in a little effort shows respect. Basic grooming, being clean and presentable, also matters.
Makes sense. Put your best foot forward, but still be you.
Exactly. And finally, try to bring a positive and reasonably enthusiastic energy to the date. Even if you're nervous, try to project openness and interest.
The book highlights what it calls a dynamic trio for projecting confidence and approachability. What does that involve specifically?
Yes, the dynamic trio. That refers to the powerful combination of your posture, your eye contact, and your smile. When these three work together harmoniously, they send a strong signal of confidence and openness.
Posture, eye contact, smile.
Right. Good posture, as we said, communicates self-assurance. Natural, comfortable eye contact shows you're present, interested, and trustworthy. And a genuine smile radiates warmth and friendliness, making you seem much more approachable and inviting. Practicing these can make a significant positive impact on that first impression.
Okay, so we've made the intro, maybe sat down. Once the conversation starts, it's not just about what we say, but really how we listen, right? The book goes into quite a bit of detail about the art of active listening.
Absolutely. Active listening is so much more than just passively hearing the words someone is saying. It involves fully concentrating on their message, understanding their meaning, both the spoken words and the unspoken feelings, and then responding thoughtfully.
How do we show we're actively listening nonverbally?
Good nonverbal cues are key.
Right.
Maintaining that appropriate eye contact we discussed. Having open and relaxed body language, leaning in slightly, can show engagement, avoiding crossed arms, nodding occasionally to show you're following along, and using facial expressions that generally match the speaker's emotions, showing empathy or interest.
Mirroring their expression a bit.
Subtly, yes. Not mimicking, but reflecting understanding. Then there are the verbal cues, asking relevant, open-ended follow-up questions to encourage them to elaborate.
Like, tell me more about that, or how did that make you feel?
Exactly. Paraphrasing what you've heard to confirm your understanding and show you're processing it. For example, so if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like you found that experience really challenging.
Okay, paraphrasing.
Using minimal encouragers, small verbal cues like, I see, okay, that makes sense, shows you're tracking without interrupting their flow. And crucially, avoiding interrupting them mid-thought to jump in with your own story. Let them finish.
That's a hard one sometimes.
It takes practice. It's really about showing genuine curiosity and attentiveness. And part of active listening is also being attentive to your date's comfort level, noticing their verbal and nonverbal cues, and respecting their boundaries if a topic seems sensitive.
The book also brings up this interesting concept called the spotlight effect. What exactly is that, and how does it tend to affect us on dates?
Ah, the spotlight effect. It's that very common feeling we get, especially in potentially evaluative situations like a first date, that we are the absolute center of everyone's attention. That our every word, gesture, and even our perceived flaws are being intensely scrutinized and judged by the other person.
Like, everyone's noticing that tiny stain on my shirt, or that I stumbled over a word.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We vastly overestimate how much others are actually paying attention to those little things. It can lead to a lot of self-conscious thoughts, anxiety about making a mistake, and generally prevents us from being present and authentic.
So how do we step out of that imaginary spotlight and actually focused on connecting with the person we're with? What's the antidote?
The key is to consciously shift your focus outward. Instead of being hyper-focused on your own internal state and performance, am I being funny enough? Do they like me? What should I say next? Actively direct your attention to your date.
Focus on them.
Yes. Listen intently to what they are saying. Ask them thoughtful questions about their interests, their experiences, their perspectives. Observe their body language, their expressions. Cultivate genuine curiosity about who they are as a person.
Get out of your own head.
Precisely. When you're genuinely curious and focused on learning about them, there's simply less mental bandwidth available to worry about how you're coming across. It takes the pressure off you and allows for a much more natural and authentic interaction to unfold.
That makes a lot of sense. Shift the focus. Okay, now. Those dreaded awkward silences. They're practically a cliche in the dating world. They can feel so uncomfortable. What strategies does the book suggest for navigating those moments when the conversation just stops?
Yeah, they happen. The first and most important thing the book stresses is, don't panic. A brief silence doesn't automatically mean the date is a disaster or that you failed. It's often totally normal.
Okay, deep breath. Don't panic.
Right. Sometimes you can even acknowledge it lightly, maybe with a touch of humor if it feels natural for your personality. Something like, well, we seem to have talked ourselves out for a second, can break the tension.
Okay, acknowledging it.
Another strategy is to use it as a cue to ask another open-ended question. Maybe loop back to something they mentioned earlier that you found interesting. You mentioned earlier you went to Place. What was that like?
Go back to a previous thread.
Exactly. Or use your surroundings as a conversation starter if you're stuck. This music is interesting, isn't it? Or, have you tried the food drink item here before?
Use the environment.
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes it's perfectly okay to just embrace a brief silence. You don't need to feel pressure to fill every single nanosecond with chatter. Just take a sip of your drink, smile gently, and allow the next topic to emerge naturally. It can actually create a bit of comfortable space.
Okay, so don't panic, acknowledge it lightly, ask a question, use the surroundings, or just chill for a second. Good options. Now, to really move beyond just surface level chat, the book talks about what it calls a conversation deep dive. What does that entail? How do we go deeper?
Right, the deep dive. This is about intentionally moving beyond the typical small talk, weather, jobs, weekend plans, and engaging in more meaningful and revealing conversations. It's where real connection starts to happen.
How do we do that without it feeling like an interrogation?
Great question. A key tool here is the power of open-ended questions. We've mentioned them before, but really focusing on asking what, how, and why questions, rather than ones that can be answered with a simple yes, no, or one-word fact.
Examples.
Instead of, do you like your job? Maybe ask what's the most rewarding part of your work, or how did you get into that field instead of did you have a good weekend? Try what was the highlight of your weekend, or what kind of things do you love doing when you have free time? See how they invite more thoughtful answers.
Yeah, they open things up. What else is part of this deep dive?
It's also about authentic sharing. Finding a comfortable balance between talking about yourself and listening to them. Being genuine in what you share, don't just present a polished highlight reel. Be willing to share appropriate personal experiences, maybe even mentioning challenges you've overcome or things you're passionate about. Vulnerability, when shared appropriately, builds connection.
Appropriately is key there, I guess.
Definitely. You don't want to overshare or trauma dump on a first date, but sharing a relevant personal story or perspective can make you seem more human and relatable.
And the book emphasizes reciprocity, right? After sharing something.
Hugely important. The book really stresses this. After you share something about yourself, make a conscious effort to loop the conversation back to your date by asking a follow-up question related to what you shared or just shifting the focus back to them.
So it doesn't become a monologue.
Exactly. For instance, if you share a story about a challenging hike you did, you could follow up with, have you done any hiking around here? Or what's the most challenging outdoor activity you've ever tried? It keeps the conversation balanced and shows you're interested in their experiences too.
Finding common ground seems so crucial for building any kind of connection or rapport. How does the book suggest we identify those shared points and use them to build that feeling of connection?
Finding common ground is like finding a shared language with someone. It makes interaction flow more easily and builds that sense of us. The book suggests looking for it in a few key areas.
Like what?
Shared interests and hobbies are an obvious one. Music, books, movies, sports, travel, food. Similar core values and beliefs. What's important to you both in life, like family, honesty, adventure, creativity, comparable life experiences or backgrounds. Maybe you grew up in the same area, went to similar schools, or worked in related fields. Even just a compatible sense of humor can be a powerful point of connection.
Okay, so identify those areas. How do we use them to build rapport?
Once you identify some commonality, make sure to highlight those similarities. Oh, well, you love obscure band too. I thought I was the only one. Show genuine enthusiasm for the shared interest.
Express excitement.
Yeah. Share related stories and experiences. If they mention loving Italian food, you could share a brief story about your trip to Italy or your favorite local Italian restaurant. But, and this is important, be careful to avoid one-upmanship.
The one-upmanship trap. Explain that.
That's when someone shares something and you immediately jump in with a story that's bigger, better, or more impressive. They say they ran a 5K, you say you ran a marathon. It can shut down the connection because it feels competitive rather than collaborative.
Right. So instead,
validate their experience first. Wow, a 5K is awesome. How was the training? Then maybe later you can share your marathon experience if it feels relevant, but focus on connection, not competition.
Validate, then share, maybe. Got it. What about differences? We won't agree on everything. How do we handle disagreements or maybe controversial topics if they come up?
That's bound to happen. The book advises approaching differences respectfully. First, really listen to understand their perspective, even if you disagree. Acknowledge their viewpoint. Okay, I can see why you might feel that way. Then express your own perspective calmly and respectfully using I statements. I tend to see it differently because...
Focus on I feel, not you're wrong.
Exactly. Sometimes you might just need to agree to disagree, especially on bigger issues on a first date. Find common ground elsewhere if possible, or gracefully change the subject. Well, we might have different views on that, but we both agree that this pizza is amazing, right?
Pivot back to common ground. Good tactic. Are there topics the book suggests generally avoiding on a first date?
Yes, there are a few common pitfalls. Generally, avoid going into excessive detail about past relationships, especially negative experiences, or comparing your date to an ex. Steer clear of deep dives into serious medical problems or financial struggles. It can be too heavy too soon. Highly controversial political or religious debates are often best saved for later, unless you find you have a lot of alignment early on. And try to avoid excessive complaining or negativity about your life, job, or the world in general. Keep the overall tone positive.
Keep it light, keep it positive, focus on connection. Okay. Dates don't always go perfectly smoothly, though. What advice does the book offer for navigating those unexpected or slightly awkward situations that can sometimes arise? Like if the restaurant you picked is suddenly closed.
Flexibility and a positive attitude are your best friends here.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a sudden change of venue or plans, like your chosen coffee shop is unexpectedly closed, try to roll with it. Be open to alternatives. Maybe say something like, oh, well, adventure time. Is there anywhere else nearby, or shall we quickly look one up? Involve them in the solution. Don't just stand there looking flustered.
Okay, be adaptable. What if you run into someone you know? That could be awkward.
Yeah, that happens. The key is a quick, smooth introduction. Introduce your date to your friend briefly. Hi, friend's name. This is date's name. We were just grabbing a coffee. Date's name. This is my friend's name. Exchange a quick pleasantry, and then gently steer the conversation back to your date or politely excuse yourselves. Don't get drawn into a long conversation with your friend and leave your date standing there awkwardly.
Smooth intro, quick exit. Got it. What about minor mishaps, like spilling a drink or tripping?
Handle it with grace and, if possible, a bit of humor. Acknowledge it, clean it up matter-of-factly. Maybe make a self-deprecating joke if that's your style. Well, clearly I'm demonstrating my coordination skills early. And then move on. Don't make a huge deal out of it. How you handle small setbacks can actually be quite telling.
Good point. And awkward silences, we covered those strategies earlier. What if your date has an unexpected emotional response to something? Gets teary-eyed or suddenly angry?
That requires sensitivity. The book advises offering empathy and validation. Wow, it sounds like that was a really difficult experience for you. Give them space to process if they need it. Don't pry or push them to talk more if they seem uncomfortable. Maybe gently suggest changing the subject if it feels appropriate. Avoid minimizing their feelings or trying to immediately fix it. Just be present and supportive.
Okay, empathy and space. Eventually, though, every date has to come to an end. How does the book suggest we end things gracefully, regardless of whether we felt a romantic connection or not? Politeness seems key.
Absolutely. Politeness and respect are paramount, even if you know deep down there won't be a second date. Always express your appreciation for their time in the conversation. Thanks so much for coffee. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Start with thanks. What if you know you're not interested in seeing them again? How do you handle that?
The key is to avoid ambiguity or giving false hope, which isn't kind in the long run. Be honest, but gentle and kind in your communication. You don't necessarily have to deliver the news right at the end of the date unless they explicitly ask about seeing you again. Often a follow-up text later is fine.
What would you say in that text?
Something like, hey, thanks again for meeting up yesterday. I enjoyed our conversation, but I didn't quite feel a romantic connection. Wishing you all the best. Keep it simple, kind, and clear. You can offer a brief, general reason if you feel it's necessary. I think we're looking for different things. But you don't owe them a detailed explanation or critique.
Okay, honest but kind. Now, what about the flip side? Handling the, I'd love to see you again, when you don't feel the same way, and they say it right there at the end of the date.
That can be tough in the moment. Again, be direct but gentle. You could say something like, I really appreciate that, and I had a nice time talking with you too. To be honest though, I didn't feel that romantic spark I'm looking for. Or slightly softer, I had a good time, but I think I see us more as friends. Avoid wishy-washy responses like, maybe. If you know it's a no, it just delays the inevitable.
Direct but gentle.
Now,
Okay, what if you did enjoy the date and you do want to see them again?
express your interest directly. Don't play games. I had a really great time tonight. I'd love to see you again. Even better, suggest a specific plan or type of activity for a second date, maybe based on something you discussed. You mentioned you wanted to try that new taco place. Maybe we could check it out next week.
Be direct. Suggest a plan.
Yeah, it shows clear interest and makes it easy for them to say yes. Make sure you have their contact info if you don't already.
What if you want to see them again, but you're genuinely unsure if they feel the same way? How do you handle that uncertainty?
You can still express interest, but maybe frame it without putting too much pressure on them. I had a really fun time tonight. I'd be up for doing something again sometime if you are. Or suggest a very low-pressure second activity. Maybe we could grab that casual drink next week. Gauge their response. Their enthusiasm, or lack thereof, will often give you a clue.
Okay, express interest without heavy expectation. And what if you express interest and they give you a direct no to a second date? How do you handle that rejection gracefully?
Acknowledge their response respectfully. Okay, thanks for letting me know. I appreciate your honesty. Avoid pushing further, trying to change their mind, or asking for detailed reasons why. Just try to end the interaction on a positive and polite note if possible. Well, it was nice meeting you anyway. Take care. And then practice that self-compassion we talked about earlier.
Right, circle back to self-compassion. Okay, last awkward bit. The physical goodbye at the end of the date. Handshake, hug, kiss. How do we navigate that?
This definitely requires reading the situation and respecting boundaries. The book emphasizes that the appropriate level of physical touch really depends on the connection you felt the overall vibe of the date, and also cultural norms.
So what's generally safe?
A handshake is almost always safe and polite. A brief, friendly hug might also be appropriate if you felt a warm connection and the body language seems receptive.
Okay. What about kissing?
Proceed with extreme caution. The book is very clear on this. A kiss on the first date should never be an assumption or expectation, no matter how well you think the date went. Explicit verbal consent is absolutely the best and most respectful approach.
So actually ask.
Yes. Simply asking directly, would it be okay if I kissed you? Or I'd really like to kiss you right now. Is that okay? Shows respect for their autonomy and boundaries. Don't rely solely on trying to interpret ambiguous body language signals for something like a kiss.
That seems bold but respectful.
It might feel bold, but it's far better than misreading a situation and making someone uncomfortable or violating their boundaries. And whatever their response is, whether it's a clear yes or a no or even hesitation, you absolutely must respect it fully.
Yeah.
If you're at all unsure, err on the side of caution and stick with a hug or handshake.
Respect the answer. Err on the side of caution. Good rules.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, after the date is over, regardless of how it went, how does the book advise us to manage our expectations for what might happen next, or just manage our feelings about the date itself?
Managing expectations post-date is crucial for maintaining your sanity. Try to focus on the experience itself rather than solely on the outcome. Did you have a reasonably good conversation? Did you learn something interesting about them or yourself? Did you practice putting yourself out there?
Focus on the process again.
Exactly. Set realistic goals for dating in general. Maybe the goal isn't always a second date, but just having a pleasant interaction or practicing your social skills. Challenge any assumptions you might be making about what the other person is thinking or feeling. You can't read minds. Use positive or realistic self-talk to manage any anxieties or disappointments that might come up. If you catch yourself thinking that was a disaster, maybe reframe it as, okay, that wasn't the connection I hoped for, but I learned that I prefer dates where X happens.
Reframe it as learning.
Except that uncertainty is just a natural part of the dating process. You won't click with everyone, and not every date will lead to more. And always, always remember that your inherent value as a person isn't determined by whether or not someone wants to go on a second date with you. Your worth is intrinsic.
That's a really important reminder. So after reflecting, how do we decide on the concrete next steps?
If it was a clear yes for you and you want to pursue it, reach out within that 24-48-hour window with that specific low-pressure suggestion for a second date. If you're genuinely unsure, give yourself some time to think, maybe reflect on the date using some prompts. We can talk about those later. Or suggest a very casual second date to see how you feel then. And if it was a clear no, formulate that polite, kind, but clear decline message we discussed earlier.
Okay, that covers the date itself pretty thoroughly. Now let's zoom out a bit. The book talks a lot about cultivating a more workable mindset for dating, going beyond just the actions. How do we overcome that deeper dating anxiety and self-doubt?
This is where the therapeutic frameworks underpinning the book really come into play, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, and mindfulness.
Yeah.
These aren't just quick fixes. They're tools for building inner strength, resilience, and that crucial self-compassion.
Okay, CBT and ACT. Can you briefly explain the difference in their approach to difficult thoughts and feelings, like dating anxiety?
Sure. In simple terms, CBT often focuses on identifying, challenging, and changing the content of unhelpful thoughts. It uses logic and evidence to restructure negative thinking patterns.
Changing the thought itself.
Right. ACT, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily try to change the thought directly. It focuses more on changing your relationship to your thoughts and feelings. It encourages accepting their presence without fusing with them, using mindfulness, and committing to actions aligned with your core values, even when difficult thoughts show up.
Accepting the thought, but not letting it drive the bus.
Exactly. Both approaches can be incredibly helpful, sometimes in combination. Let's start with the CBT approach to building self-esteem and self-worth in dating.
Okay, CBT first. How did that work?
A core part of CBT is learning to identify and challenge automatic negative thoughts, or NATs. These are those quick, often critical thoughts that pop into your head in response to certain situations, especially anxiety-provoking ones like dating.
Like the examples we talked about earlier. I'm so awkward, they won't like me.
Precisely. The first step is just becoming aware of them. The book suggests noticing triggering situations, maybe looking at your dating app profile, picking an outfit for a date, not getting a response to a message, accidentally spilling a drink on a date.
Okay, notice the trigger.
Then notice the gnat that immediately follows and the feeling associated with it. For example, trigger. No response to your message. Nat. They must think I'm boring and attractive. Feeling. Sadness. Anxiety.
Got it. Trigger, thought, feeling. What's next? Challenging them.
Yes. The next step is to play detective with that negative thought. Don't just accept it as fact. Actively look for evidence that supports it, but also, crucially, evidence that contradicts it.
Look for evidence against the negative thought.
Right. And while you're doing that, try to identify if the thought falls into any common patterns of distorted thinking known as cognitive distortions. Recognizing the distortion can help rob the thought of its power.
Cognitive distortions. Can you give some examples? The book lists quite a few, right?
It does. They're really common thinking traps. There's all or nothing thinking, seeing things in black and white categories. If this state isn't perfect, it's a total failure. Overgeneralization. Taking one negative event as the never-ending pattern. I got rejected once, so I'll always be rejected.
Okay, I recognize those.
Mental filter. Picking out a single negative detail and dwelling on it exclusively. The date went well overall, but I stumbled over one word, so it was terrible. Disqualifying the positive. Rejecting positive experiences by insisting they don't count. They said they had a good time, but they are probably just being polite.
Wow, these are sneaky.
They are. There's also jumping to conclusions, which has two flavors. Mind reading, assuming you know what someone else is thinking, usually negatively. They look bored. They must think I'm dull. And fortune telling, predicting a negative outcome. I know this day is going to go badly.
Guilty is charged on mind reading sometimes.
Many of us are. Then there's magnification or minimization, exaggerating your flaws or minimizing your positive qualities. Emotional reasoning, assuming that because you feel something, it must be true. I feel inadequate, therefore I am inadequate.
That's a big one.
Should statements, holding rigid rules about how you or others should behave, leading to guilt or resentment. I should be wittier on dates. Labeling, assigning global negative traits to yourself or others based on one behavior. I made a mistake, therefore I am a failure. And personalization, blaming yourself for events you weren't entirely responsible for. The date was awkward. It must have been all my fault.
Okay, that's a comprehensive list of ways our brains can trick us. So the process is, notice the trigger, the gnat, the feeling. Look for evidence for and against the gnat. Identify any cognitive distortions. Then what?
Then, based on the evidence and recognizing the distortion, you try to formulate a more balanced, realistic thought. It's not about forced positive thinking, but about seeing the situation more accurately.
Can you walk us through an example, maybe challenging the thought, I'm just not good enough for them?
Sure. Trigger. Preparing for a date with someone you find attractive. Nat. I'm just not good enough for them. They'll realize I'm boring, attractive, etc.
Yeah.
Feeling. Anxiety, low self-worth.
Okay, now, evidence.
Evidence for maybe. I sometimes feel awkward in conversation. My last relationship ended. Evidence against. My friends seem to genuinely enjoy my company. I have interests and passions I can talk about. This person agreed to go on a date with me, so they must see something positive. Feeling inadequate doesn't make it objectively true. Emotional reasoning.
Identifying distortions there too.
Right. Maybe emotional reasoning, possibly fortune telling, they will realize. Maybe labeling, I am boring.
Okay. So the balanced thought might be,
It could be something like, okay, I feel nervous and sometimes I worry I'm not good enough, which might be emotional reasoning or fortune telling. But the evidence suggests I have good qualities, people enjoy my company, and this person was interested enough to agree to a date. I can't know for sure how they'll feel, but I can focus on being myself and seeing if we connect.
that feels much more grounded and less anxiety-inducing.
Exactly. It acknowledges the feeling but counters the distorted thought with realism. The book also suggests using realistic affirmations as part of this CBT approach.
Affirmations like, I am wonderful. Do those work?
They can, but the key word is realistic. Generic, overly positive affirmations that you don't actually believe can sometimes backfire. Instead, the book suggests developing personalized affirmations based on your genuine strengths, values, or efforts.
So tailored to you.
Yes. Maybe instead of, I am the most charming person ever, it's I am kind and a good listener, or I am brave for putting myself out there, or I value honesty and I will be authentic on this date. Focus on qualities you possess or actions you're taking. Repeating these regularly can help counteract that negative self-talk over time.
Okay, that makes more sense. So that's a taste of the CBT approach, identifying, challenging, reframing negative thoughts. What about the ACT approach, acceptance and commitment therapy? How does that tackle dating anxiety?
ACT offers a different complementary perspective. As we said, it's less about changing the content of the thought, I'm awkward, and more about changing your relationship to it. Can you notice that thought without letting it dictate your actions?
How do you do that? How do you change your relationship to a thought?
A key concept in ACT is called diffusion, or cognitive diffusion. It means creating distance between yourself and your thoughts, seeing them as just words or mental events passing through your mind, rather than objective truths or commands you must obey.
Like stepping back from the thought.
Exactly. The book might use metaphors, like imagining your thoughts as leaves floating down a stream. You just observe them passing by without grabbing onto them or getting swept away by them, or picturing thoughts as clouds drifting across the sky.
Leaves on a stream. I like that visual.
So the thought, I'm going to bomb this date, might still pop up, but instead of fusing with it and panicking, you can acknowledge it. There's that bombing the date thought again, and let it float by while you stay focused on what you're doing in the present moment.
Acknowledge and let go?
Sort of, yes. Another huge part of ACT is values clarification, identifying what truly matters to you at your core, things like connection, kindness, authenticity, growth, courage.
Your core values. How does that help with dating?
Once you're clear on your values, you can use them to guide your actions in dating, even when anxiety or difficult thoughts show up. For example, if authenticity is a core value, you might choose to share something genuine about yourself on a date, even if the thought "they won't like the real me" is present. Your actions are guided by your value, not the fear.
So, values over fear.
That's a central idea in ACT. It's about committing to actions that move you towards the kind of person you want to be and the kind of connections you want to build based on your values.
Okay, so CBT challenges the thoughts, ACT helps accept them, and focus on values-driven actions. The book also mentions mindfulness and relaxation techniques. How do those fit in?
Mindfulness and relaxation are powerful tools that support both CBT and ACT approaches and are great for managing stress and anxiety in the moment. Mindfulness, at its core, is about paying attention to the present moment, on purpose, without judgment.
Being present without judgment. Sounds simple, but isn't always easy.
It takes practice. The book likely describes several mindfulness practices you can use in a dating context. Mindful breathing is a classic, just focusing on the sensation of your breath entering and leaving your body. It's a great anchor to come back to when your mind starts racing before or during a date.
Just focus on the breath.
Body scan meditation involves bringing awareness to different parts of your body, noticing any physical sensations, tension, warmth, tingling without judging them. This can help you become more aware of the physical symptoms of anxiety, like tight shoulders or a racing heart, and learn to sit with them without reacting impulsively.
Notice the physical signs.
Mindful walking involves paying attention to the sensation of walking your feet hitting the ground, the movement of your body, the sights and sounds around you. It can be a good way to ground yourself if you're feeling anxious before meeting someone.
Okay, those are mindfulness practices. What about relaxation techniques?
Relaxation techniques are more focused on actively reducing physical tension and stress. Progressive muscle relaxation, PMR, involves tensing and then releasing different muscle groups throughout your body, which helps release physical tension you might not even realize you're holding. Great for pre-date jitters.
Tense and release.
Guided imagery involves using your imagination to create a peaceful and calming mental scene, like a beach or a forest. It provides a mental sanctuary you can escape to when feeling overwhelmed.
Mental escape.
And the book might also mention Yoga Nidra, or yogic sleep. This is a powerful guided meditation practice that leads you into a state of deep relaxation between waking and sleeping.
Yoga Nidra. Tell me more about that one. How does it apply to dating?
Yoga Nidra is incredibly effective for reducing stress and anxiety, improving emotional regulation, and even processing difficult experiences. In a dating context, doing a short Yoga Nidra practice before a date could significantly calm your nerves and boost your confidence.
Calm the pre-date jitters.
Exactly. And after a date, especially if it didn't go well or involved rejection, Yoga Nidra can help you process those difficult emotions in a safe, relaxed state, promoting self-compassion and resilience instead of getting stuck in rumination. It helps regulate the nervous system.
Interesting. Process rejection better.
It fosters that non-judgmental awareness of your feelings and thoughts, similar to mindfulness, but in a deeply relaxed state, which can make it easier to let go of negativity and build resilience for future dating experiences.
So to recap the mindset tools, CBT helps challenge and change the content of negative thoughts using logic and evidence.
Right.
ACT and mindfulness help change our relationship to thoughts and feelings, observing them without judgment diffusing from them, accepting their presence while focusing on actions aligned with our core values.
You got it. They're different but complementary paths to a more workable dating mindset.
Okay, these are powerful mental tools. Beyond CBT, ACT, and mindfulness, does the book suggest other strategies for building general confidence and self-esteem that can help specifically with dating?
Yes, definitely. It emphasizes the importance of engaging in self-care activities across various areas of your life, not just when you're actively dating. This builds a strong foundation of well-being.
Self-care, like bubble baths.
It can be bubble baths, but it's broader than that. It includes prioritizing physical health, getting enough sleep, eating nutritious food, regular exercise. These have a direct impact on mood and resilience.
Body and mind connection.
Absolutely. Practicing those relaxation techniques we just discussed, making time for activities you genuinely enjoy and that make you feel competent or engaged, maybe rediscovering old hobbies or trying new ones.
Like what kind of activities?
Anything that builds skills or connection, maybe joining a class, cooking, painting, improv. Improv is actually great for dating. It teaches spontaneity and thinking on your feet.
Improv for dating. I like it.
Spending quality time with supportive friends and family who uplift you. Engaging creative outlets, learning something new just for the fun of it, connecting with others through social groups, clubs, or volunteering for a cause you care about.
Broadening your life beyond just dating.
Exactly. Creating a supportive physical environment too, decluttering your space, making it feel relaxing, getting exposure to natural light, even exploring something like martial arts, the book. Might mention something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as an example.
BJJ. How does that connect to dating confidence?
Well, disciplines like BJJ build physical competence, mental resilience, problem-solving skills, and offer a strong sense of community. Learning to handle physical challenges and navigate complex situations on the mat can translate into greater confidence in navigating social situations, including dating. Plus, it's a great way to meet people in a non-dating context.
Build confidence through doing.
Yeah.
Interesting. The book also talks a lot about boundaries. Why are boundaries so important in dating?
Boundaries are absolutely crucial. They are essentially the limits and rules we set for ourselves within relationships to protect our physical and emotional well-being. They help maintain our sense of self, promote mutual respect, and prevent resentment or burnout. Without clear boundaries, it's easy to feel taken advantage of or lose yourself in trying to please others.
Okay, protect well-being, maintain self, promote respect. What kinds of boundaries are relevant in dating?
The book likely outlines several types. Physical boundaries relate to your personal space, privacy, and physical touch. Who can touch you, when, where, and how. Emotional boundaries protect your feelings, limiting how much emotional energy you give. Not taking responsibility for others' feelings. Not tolerating disrespect or manipulation.
Physical and emotional. What else?
Time boundaries involve how you allocate your time and energy, how often you're available to text or meet up, not overcommitting yourself. Social boundaries might relate to introducing someone to your friends and family, or what you share on social media about your dating life.
Okay, how do we actually set and communicate these boundaries effectively? It can feel awkward.
It can, but it's a skill you can learn. First, you need to reflect on your own values, needs, and limits. What feels comfortable and right for you? What are your deal breakers? Then, you need to communicate them clearly and directly, ideally early on, before resentment builds. Use I statements.
I statements.
Yes. Instead of, you text me too much, try, I feel overwhelmed when I get multiple texts during my workday. I can usually respond in the evenings. It's less accusatory and focuses on your needs.
Clear and direct. Use I statements. What else?
Be consistent. If you set a boundary, stick to it. Inconsistency sends mixed messages. Remember that it's okay to say no without excessive explanation or guilt. And just as importantly, respect others' boundaries when they communicate them to you. Healthy relationships require mutual respect for limits.
Reflect. Be clear and direct. Be consistent. Say no. Respect others.
Got it. What do you do if someone crosses your boundary despite you communicating it?
That's where consistency is key. Address it directly and calmly the first time it happens. Hey, we talked about boundary, and action crossed that line for me. Please respect that going forward.
Address it directly. If the behavior continues, you need to be firmer and potentially state a consequence. I've mentioned that boundary is important to me. If it happens again, I'll need to consequence, e.g., end the conversation, take space, reconsider the connection. If the boundary violation is serious or persistent, you may need to remove yourself from the situation or end the connection entirely. Sometimes seeking support from friends or a therapist can help navigate these situations too.
Okay, address directly. Be firm, state consequences, remove yourself if needed. Can you give quick examples for physical, emotional, and time boundaries?
Sure. Physical. I'm not comfortable with specific physical touch yet. I need things to move a bit slower. If they persist, I need you to respect my physical boundaries. If you can't, I need to leave. Emotional. I can't be available to talk for hours every night when you're upset. I need some downtime too. Let's plan specific times to connect. If they constantly unload, I care about you, but I can't consistently take on this level of emotional intensity. I need you to seek other support as well. Time. I can chat for about 15 minutes now, but then I need to get back to work. If they keep calling during work, as I mentioned, I can't take personal calls during work hours. Please text if it's urgent, otherwise I'll get back to you later.
Those are helpful examples, thanks. Another tool the book recommends is self-reflection after dates. Why is that valuable?
Self-reflection is like reviewing the game tape after a match. It helps you gain insights into your own patterns, feelings, and what you're learning from your dating experiences. It turns each date, good or bad, into a learning opportunity for growth, rather than just a pass-fail test.
Learning opportunity. What kinds of things should we reflect on?
The book likely provides some useful prompts. You could ask yourself, how did I feel overall during the date? What parts did I enjoy? What parts felt uncomfortable? Was there a sense of connection? Did I feel comfortable being myself? How was the communication flow? Did I listen well? Did I share authentically? Did I set or maintain my boundaries effectively? Did their behavior align with my core values? What did I learn about myself or what I'm looking for from this interaction?
Those are great prompts. So it's about understanding your own experience better.
Exactly. It's not about judging yourself or the other person harshly, but about honest self-discovery. What worked, what didn't, what do I want to do differently next time? It helps you become more intentional in your dating life.
Intentional dating. I like that. Now, a really important topic. Recognizing and addressing unhealthy relationship patterns or red flags early on. What does the book say about prioritizing safety here?
Prioritizing emotional and physical safety is paramount. The book undoubtedly stresses the importance of being aware of potential red flags, warning signs that might indicate unhealthy or even abusive dynamics. Identifying these early can save you a lot of heartache or worse.
What are some common red flags the book might highlight?
There are several well-recognized ones. Love bombing, overwhelming you with intense affection, attention, and grand gestures very early on, often to gain control or influence quickly. Gaslighting, manipulating you into doubting your own perceptions, memory, or sanity.
Love bombing and gaslighting.
Isolation, trying to cut you off from your friends, family, or support system. Extreme jealousy or controlling behavior, dictating who you can see, what you can wear, checking your phone, constant accusations, disrespect, belittling you, mocking your interests, dismissing your feelings, name-calling.
Those sound serious.
They are. Also, inconsistency. Being charming one moment and cold or cruel the next. Hot and cold behavior. Blaming. Constantly shifting blame onto you. Never taking responsibility for their own actions. Lack of accountability. Refusing to apologize or acknowledge wrongdoing. Pushing boundaries. Repeatedly ignoring or testing the limits you've set. And moving too fast. Pushing for commitment or intimacy before you're ready or have really gotten to know each other.
That's a scary list. Trusting your gut seems important here too.
Absolutely. If something feels consistently off, even if you can't pinpoint exactly why, pay attention to that feeling. Don't dismiss your intuition.
Okay, paying attention to red flags is crucial. What about knowing when our own struggles with dating anxiety or past patterns might warrant seeking professional help? When should someone consider therapy?
That's a really important question. The book likely suggests considering therapy if dating consistently causes significant distress or impairment in your life. Some specific indicators might be persistent, overwhelming anxiety or fear related to dating that doesn't improve with self-help strategies, difficulty forming or maintaining relationships despite wanting to, chronically low self-esteem or self-worth that heavily impacts your dating life.
So if the anxiety is really persistent or it's hard to form connections.
Right. Also, if past trauma or difficult relationship experiences continue to negatively affect your current dating behavior or choices, if you find yourself repeating the same unhealthy relationship patterns over and over again, or if you just feel generally overwhelmed, hopeless, or stuck when it comes to dating and relationships.
Feeling hopeless or stuck.
Yeah. If you consistently find yourself thinking things like, I'll always be alone, there's something wrong with me, dating is just too painful, or I keep picking the wrong people, therapy can provide valuable support, insight, and tools to help you break those cycles and build healthier connections, both with others and with yourself.
Okay, that's helpful guidance on when to seek professional support. We've covered so much ground, from understanding anxiety to practical dating skills to building a healthier mindset. As we wrap up, what are some key takeaways you want listeners to hold on to from this deep dive into the Therapist Handbook?
I think the biggest takeaway is that dating is fundamentally a journey of connection, yes, but also very much a journey of self-discovery. And on that journey, you are absolutely worthy of love, belonging, and respect, regardless of your relationship status.
That's essential. Worthiness isn't conditional.
Exactly. Finding a compatible partner often takes time, patience, and definitely a good dose of self-compassion. Remember that dating involves skills communication, boundary setting, emotional regulation, and like any skill, it can be learned and improved with practice and awareness.
It's a skill we can develop.
Yes. The tools and strategies we've discussed, things like challenging those negative thoughts, practicing self-compassion, setting healthy boundaries, listening actively, prioritizing your safety. These aren't just about finding a date. They're about building a healthier relationship with yourself first.
Building that foundation within.
Right. Expect ups and downs. They're totally normal. The key is consistent self-work. Implementing these techniques not just once, but making them part of how you navigate the world. This will build genuine confidence and resilience over time.
So embrace the journey, be kind to yourself, use the tools.
Absolutely. Celebrate your progress, however small. Trust your ability to connect with others authentically, and know that you absolutely have the capacity to make positive changes in your dating life and build fulfilling connections.
The book's author, Ronan Danziger, includes a personal message too, doesn't he? Reinforcing some of these ideas from his perspective as a therapist.
He does. He essentially shares that if you're struggling, you're truly not alone. He draws on his experience seeing clients transform their dating lives by applying these principles from CBT, ACT, and mindfulness. He emphasizes that understanding yourself better and developing healthier habits is entirely possible.
Does he highlight any specific negative thought patterns to be especially aware of?
Yes, he often points out common ones like, I'm not good enough, I'll be rejected, there's something wrong with me, I'll end up alone, or dating is pointless. He encourages listeners to gently notice these when they arise and apply the techniques we've discussed.
Notice and challenge, or notice and diffuse.
Exactly. He also really reiterates the importance of active listening, which we've touched on.
Can we quickly recap the key components of active listening?
Sure. The core elements are pay attention, minimize distractions, be present, show you're listening, nodding, eye contact, leaning in, provide feedback, paraphrase, ask clarifying questions, defer judgment, avoid interrupting with your own opinions, and respond appropriately. Show empathy, be respectful.
Pay attention, show listening, feedback, defer judgment, respond appropriately. The book suggests practicing this, right?
Yes, it includes an exercise suggestion. Basically, have a conversation with a friend or family member with the specific goal of practicing these active listening skills. Ask them for feedback afterwards. How well did you pay attention? Did they feel heard? It's a skill that benefits all relationships, not just romantic ones.
Practice makes perfect, or at least better. What about conversation starters? We talked about opening messages, but what about keeping conversations going on dates?
Right. The book emphasizes moving beyond just factual questions and asking more open-ended questions that invite stories, feelings, and perspectives. Focus on what, how, and why.
Be genuinely curious.
Yes. Be genuinely curious. Listen to the answer fully before thinking about your next question. Share relevant things about yourself, too, finding that balance. Be mindful of the context. Don't ask super deep questions 2 minutes into meeting someone. Avoid making it feel like an interrogation. It should be a natural back and forth. The goal is connection, not just information gathering.
What kind of categories of conversation starters does it suggest having in your back pocket?
It might categorize them like icebreakers, light, situational, getting to know you, hobbies, passions, work life, shared interests, diving deeper into things you both enjoy, and deeper questions. Values, perspectives on life, dreams, use these cautiously and when appropriate.
Use deeper questions cautiously. Good tip. Any exercises for practicing conversation starting?
Yes, the book suggests practicing. You could brainstorm open-ended questions for different scenarios, role play with a friend, even practice asking questions about articles you read or podcasts you listen to, just to get in the habit of formulating thoughtful, open-ended inquiries.
Okay, practice asking better questions. There's also a cool suggestion about using improvisation exercises.
Yes, the improv exercises. These are fantastic for building spontaneity and comfort with unpredictable conversations, which dates often are. One exercise mentioned is the random prompt question exercise.
How does that work?
You could literally open a book to a random page, Point to a word and then set a timer for, say, 1 minute to formulate an open-ended question related to that word. Maybe make it exploratory. What does word make you think of? Experiential. Tell me about a time you felt word. Or hypothetical. How might word change things if?
Random word prompts. That sounds fun and challenging.
It is. You can even try connecting the question back to one of your own experiences briefly, just like you would in a real conversation. Practicing this, maybe even recording yourself or getting feedback, helps you think on your feet and ask more engaging, less predictable questions.
Great for breaking out of conversational ruts. And finally, just to reiterate the power of self-reflection after dates.
Absolutely. The book strongly encourages taking a few minutes after a date to reflect using those prompts we discussed earlier. Overall experience, connection, comfort level, communication, your listening sharing, boundaries, values alignment, and key learning. Adapt them to what feels right for you. It's about honest self-discovery and continuous growth on this dating journey.
Fantastic. Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. It really feels like the Therapist's Handbook for Modern Dating offers a compassionate and practical roadmap for navigating the complexities of connection today.
It really does. It moves beyond superficial tips and gets to the heart of building self-awareness, resilience, and healthier relationship skills.
Thank you so much for sharing all these insights. Hopefully this gives everyone listening some valuable tools and encouragement.
My pleasure. Remember to be kind to yourselves out there.